Welcome to Executive Access, created for motivated professionals. This is your home for real talk with executives about their career journeys, leadership practices, successes, and learnings along the way. I am your host, Jamie Tazi. Today, we'll hear from Mike Carter, founder and CEO of eGroup. I've enjoyed getting to know the eGroup team over the past few years, and I couldn't wait to sit down with Mike to understand how he was able to create such an impactful business with such an amazing culture. Mike talks about how his own leadership had to evolve in the 25 years since building, founding, and growing eGroup, as well as the things that have never changed, including the fundamental values by which the organization was created. Mike talks about the two main qualities he looks for in hiring his team members and where he is spending his time right now at this point in eGroup's journey. Mike is a thoughtful and principled leader, and I know you will enjoy hearing from him. Let's dive in. Welcome, Mike Carter, to Executive Access. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks. So you are the CEO and founder of eGroup, now eGroup Enabling Technologies. So that's an IT services, a leading IT services company. And if I have done my math correct, you are celebrating your 25th anniversary. Is that right?
That's correct. This July will be our 25th year in business.
Congratulations. You know, I was looking at your whole bio and I was so impressed to see that you started eGroup like less than 10 years out of college. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, I can't even imagine that because I think of myself less than 10 years out of college. I can't imagine starting anything, much less being a CEO and a founder. So that's pretty impressive. So I want to get into all of that. But first, I'm so curious of what you're training for these days, because I know you've run Ironmans or you've done super Ironmans or ultras or whatever they're called. Are you training for something right now?
Yeah, no Ironmans. Those are way too formal and way too technical for me. But I did spend many years running adventure races, which are kind of like the gritty, unshaven kind of half brother of Ironmans, which are super fun. So they're usually outdoors across vast distances, and it's running, trekking, a lot of orienteering, so map and compass, mountain biking, which I prefer to road cycling. So did that for a while, then kind of went straight into ultras and knocked out some distances and kind of had my fill of that. And so now I'm actually doing more of weight training, strength training, and that's kind of what my latest personal challenge is for myself. And it's required all of the different, mental and physical muscles, just in recalibrating diets and thinking about new routines and all of that. So it's fun.
Is that the common thread? Like, is it challenging yourself, or
yes.
is it? Yeah, so is that?
Yes.
Is that
yes. It's doing things that are different for me, and then I think all improvement is built on this idea of just committed consistency and kind of chipping away at it and we've talked about this in the past, finding those edges, finding the borders, seeing how far you can go with something. So that's my current interest.
That's great. I definitely see that about you. What else? Anything else that you're working on? Sort of my growth mindset question, learning and growing, whether that be professionally or personally?
So certainly, as we talked about a little bit in prelude before we started really leaning into this, learning how to be a better parent and the adult perspective, right? Having adult relationships with my children. So learning a lot from my wife, Catherine, who is definitely the most supportive partner and someone who really tells me what I need to hear. So trying to be open to that. Sometimes it's really hard to take one hat off and put on the next. So
I'm struggling with that too. Luca just came home at the holidays for break, and in the car ride home, sometimes my husband's like, "You talk too much about this stuff," but I just kind of busted out. I said, "Hey, Luke, I've been thinking a lot, and I know that you've been on your own at college, freshman year, kind of coming and going as you please. And I want you to feel like you can do that here, but let's just talk about respect. I can't go to sleep if I don't know where you are. So just check in." And he sort of thought about it for a second. He's like, "Yeah, I think that makes sense." And so I'm navigating that same thing too. Now he's home for the summer. We're Well, Mateo's going off in a couple of years, so I'm right there. I might come and get
Right.
some advice from you along the way, since
Well,
you're a little bit further along than I am.
right. Happy to share. Don't have it all figured out. But, one of my personal regrets is that I don't have a closer relationship with my parents now. I
Mhm.
think both of us have struggled to figure out what that parent child relationship looks like now that I'm 53. And I don't want to move into that space with my own children. I absolutely love who they are as adults. And we've had some great times, but it is a journey to continue to perfect for sure.
Yes, well, I think with that intention, you will definitely be successful in that. So that's great. Well, I thought it would be fun just to reminisce a little bit about how we met. I remember us working together on our teams were working together on a few projects when I was at Microsoft, and we were partnering together because, of course, eGroup is one of the top Microsoft partners. But then it wasn't until I left Microsoft and it was early 2020 and I had an opportunity to work more closely with you and get to know the team. It was right during the start of COVID. And I was so amazed by how your team was so resilient in that and really stepping up to meet customers' needs and to help them through all the chaos of, work from home and everything else that they were doing. And so I remember thinking, wow, Mike has created a pretty amazing culture and just a really amazing team, and so it was so fun for me to get involved, and I appreciate that you let me get to know your team a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for leaning in with us on the journey and being open to learning about who we are and what we do. So it's been quite the ride. Culturally, when I think about eGroup and I think about what we've accomplished with kind of the esprit de corps of the team or just kind of that underlying ethos, um, I feel very strongly that I alone can't create the culture. All I can do, and I learned this from somebody else. I can't recall where I came across it, but um, I can only create the climate for the right things to occur. Ultimately, it's the people that join our team, the people that share our values that really create the culture. And COVID was a great opportunity for us to really test the metal of what that meant because you hear a lot about transparency and trust, and I think those things nurture safe spaces for people, especially when they understand the context of decision making and kind of what's gone into the soup of the environment that you're in. So having broad goals, teaching or expecting people to um, move through their careers as adults in pursuit of these broader goals and not dictating how they do the work, just kind of telling them what's important and letting them help us arrive at those destinations. All of that came into full view with COVID, where basically everybody kind of got the rug pulled out from under them and had to think a little bit differently about how to get the work done. So those larger, softer aspects of things that we had pressed on for years really set us up for success. So
That's excellent. One thing that I felt like I noticed at that time with your team was this North Star of what I call customer obsession. And
yes,
when I talked to your team, it was all around them rallying around, okay, it's not about the service offerings that we have, although those will be really valuable to our team. It's about what do our clients need and how are we going to help them be successful. And I think that's was such a key to your success from my point of view, and sort of a small angle. I mean, that customer obsession, putting them at the center is sort of a hallmark of your culture, I would say. Would you agree?
absolutely. Continuous improvement, taking these skills that we've mastered and kind of putting the customer at the center of everything that we do. Um, those are just deeply entrenched personal almost obligations that I have, and it's really a lot of the motivation behind what got me into the space of creating eGroup to begin with
Yes,
was
thank you.
to understand how we could take this deeply imprinted set of values that I had, and certain these come from my mother and my father, to take this inclination that I had to solve problems because I just find that fascinating. Problems of any kind, right? We can touch on that in a little bit. And then also this, almost personal responsibility to take skills that I have access to, things that I know, and make those useful and purposeful for other people. It just kind of all came together. And when I think about the impetus for for eGroup and how it came together, that it is, it's a passion play. I mean, and it's a very personal representation of the passion that I have for the work. And the key beneficiary in that is the customer. I mean, they both, determine the value that we're delivering. And they also kind of dictate some of the terms in which we provide that, which is very instructive and very helpful as we think about the future and how we continue to solve problems on their behalf in the future. So
Yes.
I think if you really pay attention to what the customer is looking for and how they're leading you, you're always going to create things of immense value for them.
Well, that's definitely one of your core values then. Do you mind if we go back to
Sure.
starting eGroup? Because like I said, you were relatively early in career when you did. I assume you had a passion for technology, but can you talk big time? So what was it that had you create eGroup? You started touching on it, your values and things. And tell me about that early time.
So creating eGroups probably one of the first lessons in perspectives that I received. And I really enjoyed the career that I had prior to eGroup. I was very fulfilled. I felt like I was doing meaningful work and I was doing it with people that I greatly respected. But as that organization continued to grow, they started moving in a different direction. And so, kind of a unique opportunity with that company happened around the same time that there were some market inflections about getting people enabled with applications and information kind of outside of the walls of the office. It was kind of the early days of
Mm.
Salesforce automation, kind of mobile workforce. And it was actually my wife, Catherine, who was like, this might be what I think she was thinking of it as, well, you can relocate to Pennsylvania and spend your adult career on an airplane and you'll never see me and the kids again. Or you could start your own business and then you can be home a lot and, you can do all of those same things. And she had heard at a party from some folks that I worked with that I did really good work. And she said, maybe it's time and it's a good opportunity. So that was really the opportunity to kind of connect several things together, both personally and professionally. And that is really the legitimate starting point in terms of my mind of what got me started down that path.
Well, this is a great opportunity for me to point out that having a really supportive partner is the number one thing. Jeff is like that for me. And it sounds like
Yes.
Catherine was a great
Yes.
nudge in that because I think about it, having spent most of my career at a very large company, it's a little intimidating going out on your own and starting that. And I'm curious, if you think about the 25 years, I love that this is going to turn into a 25-year anniversary episode. Um, how can you think about like some inflection points about your leadership? Because, your leadership now versus 25 years ago when you started, how
Oh, it's
have
radically
you had
different.
to evolve through that journey? And I'd love to hear, sort of you maybe start at the beginning and walk me through.
Yeah, some of that evolution was desired. Some of that was forced,
Hmm.
right? And honestly, the way I got into eGroup is, I didn't. There's a great quote by E.L. Doctorow about writing that says, um, sometimes in the process of writing, I can't remember the exact quote, but you can only see to the end of the headlights. But you can get all the way there. So if you're taking like a road trip to New York at night, you really technically, visually can only see to the end of the
Mm.
headlights. But most folks have faith that you're going to go all the way. The one difference there is I didn't know where I was going to go with it. I knew what I could do in the moment, and I knew what made sense from the opportunity side, and I could do a lot of good for customers. But moving forward in that progression, there was a lot I didn't know, but I was open to learning, and some of that came reactively, and some of that came responsively, right, responding to situations. But from different inflection points with eGroup over time, things that really stand out are both technological and then economical. So, when I think about technology, there was this ability to securely extend application and information outside of the walls of an organization. Then there was virtualization that came in and just really turned the industry on its head, and that launched a number of different kind of iterations of eGroup as we reinvented, who we are and what we did, and that will change again now that we're moving into the AI space. economically, we had the dot-com bubble bust of, spring of
I remember that.
2000, kind of right after, I started the company. Then we had September 11th, which was, just significant from multiple different perspectives. And then the kind of the housing bust, with the Great Recession, I think they call
Yes.
that, of 07, '08. So a number of very delicate economical situations that had to be navigated. But, going back, a lot of these just kind of fundamental values, things, kind of blue collar work ethic that I think my parents impressed on me of, you know, uh, kind of run a debt-free organization, manage. I mean, just the basics. I didn't think about it in terms of big business, but I just took the things that I knew and that I had learned, and I put those into motion, and that kept us safe, right? Risk being not risk averse, but risk tolerant and risk smart. So
Right.
yeah, one thing that I wished I would have done differently was to have spent more time taking formal business classes or getting some type of mentorship
Mm.
around the running of the business, right? My background was technology, it wasn't operationally running a business. And as we grew, that certainly came into focus. So, but taking what I had and being able to put that into motion and remaining open minded and doing things based on um, what's right and fair to all parties was kind of the way that I learned, trial and error and iteratively, and I've gotten better over time. So the leader I am now is definitely radically different than how I started, and I appreciate that journey now, even though at the time I never saw myself in a role like this.
So the core values are still there, right? Doing
Yes.
what's right for people and the
Yes.
business, the blue collar work ethic and the way you run,
Mhm.
eGroup. So what are the parts? So the values are always there. What's the part that you would say is more radically different today then?
So letting go, the
Mm.
delegation, being a problem solver, sometimes I think, can be mischaracterized or labeled as perfectionism, and understanding that sometimes perfect, as the quote goes, perfect is the enemy of done, and allowing others to learn too, being patient. So, as time has gone by, instead of, being the person that did the work, supporting the team that does the work, and shifting my focus to working on the business and those meaningful things versus in the business. Those are the most profound changes. And I mean, that was real. It's been a very long growth journey for me in that regards, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, I talk to founders and I've sort of studied the growth trajectory of organizations, and a lot of times it's not the same leader that is the founder that is still with the organization, certainly at the size eGroup is today and 25 years later. And so
Right.
you almost have to reinvent yourself, right, along the
Yep.
way, because the skills for a founder that might have made you successful as a founder might not be the same as, today. So I think that
Absolutely.
speaks to your, love of, learning and just continuing to iterate there. Executive Access is brought to you by The Ideal Life. The Ideal Life offers a multimedia platform that is focused on cultivating a growth mindset. Here you'll find a supportive community, valuable content, and transformative coaching aimed at helping you live a more gratifying and joyful life. Ready to take the next step in your personal growth journey? Visit theideallife.com to explore their wealth of resources and join their vibrant, growing community today. Um, what about on the innovation side? So, I mean, even in the short time that I've, been close to eGroup, I remember when in 2020, I came at things from like a business applications perspective. And I think I might have said to you, Mike, your team is amazing. You should be picking up like power apps and more biz apps kind of things. And you were like, hold on there, and now just a few years later, you have a data and AI practice. You're one of the premier and early adopter partners of Copilot and doing all of this much broader things. And I'm sure that is symptomatic of the entire time you've innovated. How do you keep that growth minded culture going as the company grows and becomes bigger?
It's a great question. The easy answer here is to apply the same types of decision making to what we're going to do as to what we've done. And when I think about what has moved us into different areas over time, the first truth that I would like to say is that technology is a tool. It's not a reason to do something, it is an enabler of being able to accomplish something. And so certain technologies come into focus at different timelines depending on where people are in the journey.
Mhm.
But they can always be measured across two different areas. The first is kind of, fit for purpose, fit for utility, right? Just the practical application of the tool to solving a problem. The other part of that is the more outcomes oriented expectation of the adoption of technology, which, just simplistically put, if you're going to solve a problem, there's really not a lot of merit in solving a problem if you cannot deliver something that is faster, better, and less expensive. And expensive isn't just monetarily, it can be in time, it can be resources. It just has to be, something more substantive than just, hey, we applied new technology to it. So when we think about the future, when we think about innovation, when we think about who will we be and what will we be doing, it's more or less as easy as thinking, how will people solve the problems of today 4 or 5 years from now? And what do we need to be thinking about right now to get there as quickly as possible? And another quote that I'm really fond of is, the best way to predict the future is to kind of help create it. So taking some of that thoughtfulness and that mindset and bringing it into now is one of the easiest ways to do it. So it's not a really difficult recipe if you're
Well, I
really thinking
mean, the
about
way
it
you
that
say it makes it sound really easy, but I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense. But and right now you all are on the cutting edge of AI because AI is touching every single person, every single business, and the businesses I talk to are excited about it, but very few of them really know how to harness it. And there's all the ethical considerations and everything. And yet your team is out there on the forefront helping organizations do that. Like, what have you learned with your team about even just bringing AI forward in a world where it's still evolving?
even in a technology company, lots of, yeah, fear is not really the right word, nor is anxiety, but maybe some trepidation about maybe allowing the genie out of the bottle, so to
Mm.
speak, right? It's just kind of being a little um, uncertain about the future. But AI is no different than other tools. It is, but it isn't. It has the power to do things that are significantly more impactful, but fundamentally, it's just another tool, which, if it's used inappropriately, will have outcomes. So, responsible AI, getting right with the technology, understanding that any tool has um, intended and unintended consequences, and then putting in the necessary safeguards to protect people, to protect information, and to protect kind of the value expectation of applying that technology to the problem at hand is paramount. For us, it's all about keeping humans in the loop, right? We fundamentally believe that it's not AI that will put people out of jobs so much as humans using AI putting humans out of work, so to speak. The kind of analogy I use oftentimes is that humans are really good at creating superhuman tools, right? When we think about binoculars, when we think about a car, we are constantly augmenting all aspects of our work and our life with tools. And AI is fundamentally no different. It just, adds more to the cognitive space that is probably a little unfamiliar to us. So I think with the right approach to that, and certainly many organizations, especially Microsoft, who we're very closely partnered with, are investing heavily in responsible AI, and we expect to be very much on that forefront and to lead with trust and transparency in that space as well.
I'm so glad you're talking about problem solving and outcomes. And the one thing that I love to do, I sort of geek out on it, is I notice things and I study things, and they're usually outcomes. And I'll say, wow, that was a great outcome. And I get so curious as to, okay, but how did you create that? Because it's one thing to say, I want this, I love that outcome. It's another thing to actually know how you do it. And one of the things that I noticed in working with your team lately is when I engage with them, they're actually using the latest and greatest tools.
Hmm.
They're using Copilot. They're creating presentations with the AI assistant, bringing their great ideas, but also using AI to assist. And I mean, honestly, it makes me up my game when I'm with them because I feel like a dinosaur. Like I'm not using these things. But really, the question I wanted to ask around that is I'm noticing how your team is really galvanizing around that.
Hmm.
Is that something that is just in the DNA of the people you hire? Is it a value at eGroup? Is it something that you're driving as a leader? How do you get that? Because, at Microsoft, we did a lot of things really well. And I can't say that I was always pushed to, really dig in deep with the
Right.
technology and be the best users, of
Hmm.
it. And your team is. And really the question I'm asking is, how do you create that environment? Because the outcome is amazing. And I'm just so curious if you're like, wow, that's great. Yeah, I just expect that. Or there's something you're doing that will help other leaders on the call think about, what they can do to drive those kind of behaviors.
So we don't mandate anything. But if we're really good at what we do, then the tools that we are identifying as being, real catalytic problem solvers are tools that kind of pass the bar for natural selection, which means people will gravitate towards the use of those tools because they fundamentally make the job, their tasks, easier. So the fact, like, I would be upset if we had to mandate adoption of technology because that means we're moving into a different dimension where we're doing technology for technology's sake. Technology, when it's magical, when it really fulfills the promise of what we want, it is absolutely indistinguishable or invisible for folks. They just use it in a way that allows them to focus on the task and, the end result of that task, right? Kind of results, not effort, right? So the effort just kind of disappears.
I wonder, I believe that too. I also think that fundamentally people don't like to change. I mean, every time I get a new iPhone with a
Yeah.
new, interface,
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, I have to figure out how to use this again. And I can't stand it for a couple days. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wow, this is great. I love it. But would I have pushed myself to do it? And so I wonder, I know you've shared with me, at least at a high level, some of your hiring practices. Are there certain, fundamental values or skill sets or mindsets that you look for when you hire? Because I do believe what you said about technology, but I also think there's something that gets people to have that growth mindset that you're talking about consistently.
This is a great topic because our talent strategy is very unlike what I've observed with other talent strategies. And if I had to really boil it down, when we look for new people to join our team, we are just fundamentally looking for people who are smart and they know how to get things done. And I will tell you that when it comes down to smarts versus resourcefulness, resourcefulness will always win because someone who is very resourceful has already embraced a growth mindset. They know that by demonstrating some type of outcome through the use of tools or whatever is within their reach to achieve that outcome is meaningful, and they can demonstrate that. So if you put something like technology in front of them, something that's anything that's faster, better, and less expensive, again going back to time, right, um, they'll automatically use it. So if you find people that are resourceful, people who just are the get it done group, I mean, you're on your way. That's all you need. Everything else can be discussed, coached, trained, right? But resourceful people, they will take advantage of all of that because fundamentally they're just resourceful. They're going to take things that are given and they're going to figure out how that gets them to where they want to be, faster.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense to me. You've got this amazing technology that you're enabling for your team and then for your clients, combined with the right type of people that are resourceful, there's that problem solver connection again that keeps coming
I
up, right? Like
know.
that's in your
It's a
DNA
kind
and
of
you've
a
built it
repetitive
into
theme.
the, I mean, and it shows, somebody like me that can spend a relative short amount of time with your team, you feel it in that going back to that culture again. I do have
And
some,
they come from all different walks of life, right?
yeah,
Resourceful is the chief requirement. It's not anything else, right? Any other dimension is just kind of whatever, right? Just resourcefulness.
resourcefulness, like figure it out. We're going
Yeah,
to solve
find people who can
problems.
get stuff done.
Excellent. I wanted to go back to something you said a little while ago. One thing that you had to learn in your journey was the letting go portion,
Mhm.
right? Can you talk to me a little bit about that? How you were able to let go, or is it still something you have to think about?
No, I am bought in with the get it donedness of the team. We achieved, I would say, critical mass maybe a decade ago, um, and from a delegation perspective, just thinking through like what do I hang on to that I just have no business hanging on to? Well, the first is I'm surrounded by people who do a really good job of telling me what I need to hear. Catherine being one of them, my wife and partner, but then also within the team at eGroup. So it's nice to be able, kind of both at work and at home, sometimes when you're decompressing and you're kind of maybe vocally going through your day and unpacking things that you're talking about, to have somebody say, "Why are you still doing that? Is that really the best use of your time? Or, shouldn't somebody else be doing that?" And you could support them. So, someone along the way said at one point, if you flip the org chart upside down, that's really the mindset you should have about supporting the team. And I've thought a lot about that over the last decade. And I look for opportunities to do that now. So if I have something that kind of lands in my lap, I look to, equip somebody else to be able to do that, and then immediately make myself available to help them in getting that done in whichever way that they need. So, and usually those tasks go to people on the team who have just demonstrated extraordinary success in being resourceful and doing that at bigger and broader levels over time. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Those are my struggles from a delegation perspective, are probably not as profound or tactical as they used to be. These days, where I spend a lot of time thinking is really on the vision, right? What are the next 5 to 10 years, and how can I make that? I used to say, I knew I'd be successful with eGroup when it was less me group and more we group. And so now taking that last piece of vision um, and what the future looks like, and equipping the team to understand and take action on that is probably the area where I'm spending a lot of time to uh, nurture the team into that mind space,
Excellent.
because it's not just work; it's equal parts passion, prediction, and just the perseverance of digging it out and figuring out what's going to stick.
How do you get, I know it's a work in progress, but how do you get your team to rally around a vision?
Great question. Um, the first thing I'll say about vision, and I've struggled with this because sometimes I didn't really understand what is vision. Is vision who we are 5 years from now? Is vision embedded in values about who we are and how we do the work? But I've gotten better with that. And what I do understand is that for different people, the use of the word vision means different things. So what I've gotten really good at from a visionary perspective is taking the things that I know for sure and putting those in writing and revisiting those often. And I will tell you that is one big learned experience for me, is that if you've said it once, you really need to say it maybe 100 or 1,000 different times. So, when I think about vision, fundamentally, our vision is the same as it's always been day one, which is this idea that we have skills. And we almost have this obligation to take these skills and invest those in the world so that we can make the world a smarter and more productive place. That has been nuanced a little bit over time in terms of making the world a more simple, more secure, and productive space. But essentially, we have skills that are of value to people. And they understand that we're applying those skills to deliver what we call speed and certainty around certain technology initiatives. So that vision is more or less the same. Now, when we were growing from say 5 million to $10 million, kind of the vision and the strategy associated with that was slightly different. So it's the aperture is widened. We're playing in more spaces now as we think about moving to the $100 million mark, and what that future looks like. So consistency in the messaging about who we are and what we do, and sometimes the non-negotiables of how we're going to do it. Um, that's been both a journey for me in crystallizing that, but it's also that common touchstone to come back to and really never miss an opportunity to try and put that on display in the context of any conversation where you think it may be warranted.
Nice. You know, I mentioned before that I just see an outcome and I'm like, that's amazing. Like there's something special going on at eGroup and what's happening. And you just said something that lit up this huge light bulb for me. And I think you said it earlier as well. And I heard it, but not in the same way. We have an obligation to take our skills and invest them to make the world a better place, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. That is a very outward mindset idea. It's not like, hey, we have these skill sets and we can take them and build a big company that, creates sort of value for others, but for ourselves, it is obligations are like a big word, right? And
It
so
is.
um, I think what I see in eGroup, and it comes across in customer obsession, is this outward mindset to say, how are we going to use what we have to help others and to really be thinking about the needs of our clients and the world and everything. So I don't know if I'm getting that right, but I just had this big, like, there it is right there. I was thinking it
Yep.
was customer obsession, but it's something about the way you use that word obligation that I think that makes your company and your values a little bit unique from what I typically see.
Well, the point of acquiring these skills is to do something meaningful with them, right? And at least that's the way my brain is wired, is that sure, I could have made a living along the way, but wouldn't it be a little more fun if we could really make a difference? And we have this just unbelievable opportunity with this team that we've created to go out there and be known for making a difference and to do things not necessarily radically, but maybe slightly unconventionally in the broader business sense of just understanding how to solve problems a little differently and being extraordinarily resourceful in doing so. I mean, I've seen some of the most amazing things, simple solutions to complex problems because people they were in an environment where they had this opportunity, as Dan Pink likes to say, is one of my favorite authors. I don't read a lot of business books, but I do read a lot of books that have profound implications on especially people in business. And Dan Pink is one of my favorite authors in that regard. And he wrote a book called Drive, which is all about what kind of powers human ambition. And one of the things that he talks about is that people fundamentally seek mastery, autonomy, and purpose in the work that they do. So if you can create an organization, if you create the climate that allows people to seek mastery in their chosen profession, just like somebody might seek mastery when they play sports, team sports, or like a musical instrument, and they have the opportunity to know what's the bigger goal we're going after so that they can self-direct towards that goal, right? We're not going to tell them um, what to do. We're gonna tell them kind of what needs to be done, and they'll surprise us with how they got
Mm.
there, right? So there's a little bit of creativity in there, and I talk about creativity, intelligence, and hustle a lot. Um, and the last part is purposefulness. I mean, if you can't find a reason for the work that you do, that just seems to be like a huge missed opportunity for personal and professional fulfillment. So, when you can take all of those and you think about the larger context of problem solving for clients, there's a lot of purpose built into the idea of making that difference and just being crazy about it, being obsessed. I mean, it's just super obsessive.
I
It's a thing for me.
I mean, it's a thing for me too. I think that's why we're so, drawn to each other in this business context. And I'm a big believer that people like to be part of something bigger than themselves.
Sure.
I think about every great sports team I was on in high school to every great team throughout my career journey, having a shared vision at whatever
Yep.
level, that could mean, a lot of things,
Yep.
was so important. And then a group of people that are sort of rallying around it and bringing their best. Well, you certainly do that at eGroup. I have one more question around culture. I don't know how long ago it was, 1 or 2 years ago, you acquired or merged with Enabling Technologies.
Yes.
And, so you had this 25-year, 23-year culture, very deeply embedded. I'm sure Enabling had their own culture, different, but also amazing. How has that been kind of bringing together two teams with different cultures? I'm curious about any learnings and what you had to do to kind of come together. So that's, I don't know. I'm assuming you didn't say, well, it's all ours and none of yours. But talk to me a little bit about that because I think that's really interesting. I don't hear about that too often.
Yeah. So it's been very rewarding, not only for myself, but I think for many members of the team. So we don't talk about it in terms of kind of the two different groups as much anymore because we really want to talk about it in terms of a unified team. But when we do refer to our respective paths, we talk about it in terms of legacy eGroup and legacy enabling. And legacy eGroup, really for decades has enjoyed, a very open book, trust, transparency type of mindset. Not to suggest that legacy enabling didn't, but they didn't have necessarily access to all the information. So being able to share that with them so that they can be more directionally guided in an individual capacity, I think has really uh, been welcomed by their team. I think they liked. I think at first, like most folks, right? Like when you see the receipt, you're a little, "Ooh, I don't know," but then you can, once with knowledge is power, right? You really understand how the decisions you make and the work that you do kind of leads to a result. But on the flip side, just operationally astute. I mean, the team from the legacy enabling side, I mean, just punching above their weight class in every statistic. So, I mean, 9 times partner of the year. I mean, really just unheard of accolades for a company that's a little smaller. So, when we think about impact, right? What brought us together was really, I always say it's like Reese's peanut butter cups or whatnot, chocolate and peanut butter, two great tastes that taste great together. But both groups coming together really added something. And the fusion of the two together has created something that is unlike anything that we've seen in the marketplace. So that part's extraordinarily exciting. There are some just operational differences that we've worked through in terms of everything from sales plan. I mean, just you name it, it is across the board. The most wonderful part of that, though, is the opportunity to go in with, with our equity sponsors and our approach and to communicate a message of how we're going to join forces. And the use of our terminology is very intentional. It's not we're acquiring you. It's not dominating or subordinating. It's very much we're coming together as one team. These are the reasons why we're going to do that. We're going to rally around these things that make us different and unique in the marketplace. And all of the other stuff, those are just details. We'll work those out together, right? And that's what we've done. And, we entered this year as a fully integrated team. So that was probably 18 months after acquisition, and it was done the right way, very thoughtfully, very intentionally. There's an old saying about slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so we took that approach in moving through it. And it's an incredible team now. So I'm just giddy about the future.
I can tell. And, I was just reflecting on how I asked that question. I'm like, the acquisition, wait, was it a merger? And I think that's why everything you just talked about in terms of not having those distinctions and that we're bringing the best of two teams
Right.
together. I didn't even know. Like it was just the way what I see and what you're doing. So
Yep.
that's actually really cool. So I think that feels very authentic to me. The entire conversation does, of course. So, well, Mike, I so appreciate you today. I ask one question at the end, which is actually really hard because we talk about so many great leadership observations and wisdom. But if you could only give one piece of advice to our listeners about leadership, what would that be?
Oh, just one piece of advice.
Just one.
That's like asking me for something simple.
It's like
is
asking
so
you for a fun
hard.
fact.
I know. I know. I got this horrible problem. And sometimes people ask me questions and I just internalize it and then I'm thoughtful about it and then, keep answering the question.
How about this? What's
probably into
one
next
piece of
week.
advice just for today that's on your mind right now that you can change later if you want?
I would say reflecting on my journey and the different ways that I've had to do my work, that growth really comes down to grit. And that in many ways, the work will change, but the process is the same. And you just sometimes have to grind it out, right?
Go through it.
Find it and just work through it, right? The only second piece of advice that I would add to that is the practical reality of focus. And I say this a lot, when you focus in on something, what it really means is that you are saying no a lot. And I say that so many times through the office because we get presented with so many fantastic opportunities, that sometimes you really have to politely decline to stay focused on the one that you should remain focused on, to focus on making that difference that you've already committed to. So those are the things that I would say, and just, never having regrets about those decisions.
I was going to give you grief for giving me two, but actually that second one speaks to me personally right now in this life. So I'm going to thank you for it. I'm going to say the first one was for all of our listeners, and that second one was for me because I needed to hear that.
My pleasure.
Well, Mike, thank you so much. Congratulations on 25 years with eGroup and all that you've created, and we can't wait to see what's in the future for you as well. So thank you.
Jamie. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please join us every Tuesday as we continue to bring you insider access to executive leadership.